The golden ratio in ancient Egyptian architecture, myth or reality? The golden ratio, often denoted by the Greek letter F, approximately 1.6 to 18, holds a unique fascination for mathematicians, artists, and architects alike. Its purported presence in ancient structures, particularly those of ancient Egypt, has fueled centuries of speculation and debate. The claim that the Egyptians deliberately incorporated the golden ratio into their architectural designs, most notably the Great Pyramid of Giza and various temples, is a compelling one. The theory suggests that the Egyptians consciously employed EF to achieve aesthetically pleasing proportions, believing it to be a key to visual harmony. However, as a critical examination reveals that the presence of the golden ratio in these structures might be a modern reinterpretation, influenced by our own mathematical biases. This raises the fundamental question: did the Egyptians intentionally use the golden ratio, or is its apparent presence merely a coincidence? Proponents of the golden ratio theory often point to the Great Pyramid of Giza as a prime example of its application. They argue that the ratio of the pyramid's slant height to half its base is remarkably close to F. While this observation is intriguing, it's crucial to acknowledge that the alignment is not perfect, and the actual ratio deviates slightly from the ideal value. Furthermore, variations in measurements due to erosion, construction techniques, and differing interpretations of the original dimensions introduce further uncertainty. Alternative geometric principles, such as the Pythagorean triangle with sides in the ratio 3.4.5, provide a reasonable fit for the pyramid's proportions. Therefore, it is plausible that the Egyptians employed different geometric principles, perhaps based on practical considerations rather than a conscious application of the golden ratio. The ancient Egyptians undoubtedly valued harmony and balance in their art and architecture. Evidence of this can be seen in the symmetrical layouts of temples and the precise proportions evident in their artwork. They employed various geometric principles, including a sophisticated grid system, to ensure accuracy and consistency in their designs. The debate centers on whether the specific application of the golden ratio was a deliberate design choice. Some argue that the presence of F, even if not explicitly documented, enhances the visual appeal of these structures. Others contend that the Egyptians were primarily focused on practical considerations, symbolic significance, and adherence to established conventions. For example, the square and rectangle were fundamental shapes in Egyptian design, often used to represent stability and order. While these shapes can be analyzed in terms of their ratios, it's important to consider the cultural and functional context in which they were employed. The ancient Greeks explicitly explored mathematical proportions, including the golden ratio, in their architectural designs. They believed that certain ratios, including F, were essential for achieving beauty and harmony, particularly in temple construction. Renaissance artists, deeply influenced by classical ideals, consciously incorporated the golden ratio into their paintings and sculptures. They viewed F as a divine proportion, believing it to be a reflection of the natural order and a key to aesthetic perfection. In contrast, there is no direct textual evidence from ancient Egypt mentioning the golden ratio or its specific application in architecture. This absence of explicit documentation raises doubts about the intentional use of F as a primary design principle. Modern scholars often use overlays and ratio diagrams to visually analyze the dimensions of the Great Pyramid and other Egyptian structures. These tools can highlight the proximity of certain ratios to the golden ratio, providing a visual representation of the mathematical relationships. However, it's crucial to recognize the limitations of these analytical methods. While these tools can demonstrate the presence of ratios close to F, they cannot definitively prove intentional use. The flexibility in interpreting measurements and the potential for coincidental alignments make it difficult to draw firm conclusions. It is possible that the observed ratios are simply the result of other design considerations or construction techniques. Therefore, while these tools are valuable for exploring mathematical relationships, they should be used with caution and interpreted within the broader historical and cultural context. It is difficult to definitively conclude that F was a primary design principle based solely on these analyses. Ancient Egyptian structures undeniably exhibit aesthetically pleasing proportions, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of geometry and design. However, the claim that the Egyptians deliberately employed the golden ratio as a primary design principle remains unproven. The presence of F in these structures might be a modern interpretation, influenced by our own fascination with this mathematical constant. While the Egyptians clearly valued mathematical harmony and order, the specific methods they used and the extent to which they consciously applied the golden ratio remain a subject of ongoing debate. Further scholarly investigation, incorporating both mathematical analysis and historical context, is needed to shed more light on this intriguing question. The allure of the golden ratio in ancient Egypt persists, inviting us to explore the intersection of mathematics, art, and history.